Good evening, everyone. Welcome, Croeso I bawb, to the Swansea University 2021 Dylan Thomas Prize via my living room. Apologies, I wish we could all be together. But I got dressed like an unmade bed, especially for Dylan tonight. It means a lot to me and a lot to the people of Swansea, and this prize is something magnificent, and it's an honour to be presenting the 2021 Swansea University Dylan Thomas Prize again. My name is Kellen Jones, and we've got a wonderful evening in store for you with readings from our international shortlist and of course the announcement of the 2021 winner of the Dylan Thomas Prize. But it gives me great pleasure to introduce Swansea University's Vice Chancellor, Professor Paul Boyle, to tell us more about this prestigious literary award for young writers and Swansea's very own Dylan Thomas. Enjoy.
Diolch, and thank you, Kellen. Noswaith dda and good evening to you all, and welcome to this year's Swansea University Dylan Thomas Prize ceremony. We're delighted that you're joining us virtually once again this year to celebrate those authors whose works of literature have been nominated for the prestigious Swansea University Dylan Thomas Prize. I'd like to thank our judges and organisers for your time and efforts to ensure that the achievements of these brilliant young writers are recognised and celebrated. And to all of our shortlisted authors, my sincere congratulations to you all, and the very best of luck to you this evening. Within difficult times, we need art and our artists more than ever. The annual Dylan Thomas Prize is one of the highlights of our Swansea University calendar, and one which we look forward to very much each year. The prize was launched in 2006 and encourages raw creative talent worldwide. As our diverse shortlist demonstrates, it celebrates and nurtures international literary excellence. As well as being one of the most prestigious, it's also one of the world's largest literary prizes for young writers. It's awarded for the best published literary work in the English language within any genre, written by an author aged 39 years or under. The award is of course named for the poet and writer Dylan Thomas, and is a celebration of his 39 years of prolific creativity and literary excellence. Thomas is one of the most influential, internationally renowned writers of the 20th century, and he grew up just a stone's throw away from our own Singleton campus. The immense legacy of Dylan Thomas endures here in Swansea to this day, and his uniquely lyrical artistic voice continues to inspire the artists of tomorrow, not least through our Dylan Ed outreach programme and our new collaborative digital project with the Harry Ransom Centre at the University of Texas at Austin, and the Dylan Thomas Trust. We'll be hearing more about both of those projects a little later. But for now, my hearty congratulations and good luck once again to tonight's fantastic shortlisted authors. I hope that you will all enjoy this event, and I'm now delighted to hand over to the award-winning musician, author and broadcaster, Kerris Matthews, for a short extract of Thomas's work. Thank you. Diolch yn fawr.
I was born in a large Welsh town at the beginning of the Great War. An ugly, lovely town. Or so it was and is to me. Crawling, sprawling by a long and splendid curving shore where truant boys and Sandfield boys and old men from nowhere beachcombed, idled and paddled, watched the dock-bound ships, or the ships steaming away into wonder and India, magic and China, countries bright with oranges and loud with lions, threw stones into the sea for the barking outcast dogs, made castles and forts and harbours and racetracks in the sand. And on Saturday summer afternoons listened to the brass band, watched the Punch and Judy, or hung about on the fringes of the crowd to hear the fierce religious speakers who shouted at the sea as though it were wicked and wrong to roll in and out like that, white-horsed and full of fishes.
Oh, what an amazingly beautiful tribute to Dylan. Thank you very, very much. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Kerris Matthews. That was ardderchog, thank you. And now each year, the Swansea University Dylan Thomas Prize attracts hugely talented young writers from across the world working across very different genres, and this year is no different. Selecting this year's winner falls to our judging panel of critically acclaimed writers and festival directors. So to tell us more about the 2021 jury, here's Professor Elwyn Evans QC, Pro-Vice Chancellor and Executive Dean for Swansea University's Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences. Wow, there's a title.
Helo, croeso cynnes iawn i Abertawe. I'm Elwyn Evans, very warm welcome to you from Swansea. This year we're celebrating the 16th anniversary of the Swansea University Dylan Thomas Prize. In spite of being physically distanced from each other, we're absolutely honoured to have a truly international panel of wonderful judges to decide our 2021 winner. From India, the chair of the judges is Namita Gokhale, an award-winning writer, publisher, co-founder of the greatest literary show on earth, the Jaipur Literary Festival. Namita, joined by Saima Aslam, the founder and director of the Bradford Literary Festival, celebrated as the most socio-economically, ethnically diverse literary festival in the UK. Irish poet and 2020 Rooney Prize winner for Irish literature, Stephen Sexton. From the US, best-selling author and 2014 winner of the Swansea Dylan Thomas Prize, Joshua Ferris, and award-winning Welsh novelist academic, Francesca Rhydderch. From an extraordinary long list of 12 books, the judges have selected 6 exceptional works for our 2021 shortlist. Chair of the judging panel, Namita Gokhale, joins us from India this evening to tell us more about the books and the voices that have captivated her and her fellow judges this year. During this extremely difficult time in India, our hearts go out to Namita, her family and her country.
I speak from India, a country devastated by tragedy and medical crisis. Rereading the rich and diverse shortlist, I was struck anew by the strength that books confer, by the truth of fiction, and the healing power of great literature. It's been an honor and a privilege to be associated once again with the inspirational Dylan Thomas Prize, this time as the chair of the distinguished jury. The 12 long-listed books, which included both fiction and poetry, all by writers under the age of 39, explored different themes and genres with sensitivity, with nuance, with a mindful understanding of the power of words. We encountered outstanding young writers from different cultures and continents. They were all exceptional, all brilliant, all full of insight and learnings. They covered themes of gender, of identity, of individual quest, of society and its dysfunctionalities, as well as the redeeming power of being human. Our shortlist included, in no particular order, Rai Curtis with Kingdom Tide, Raven Leilani with Luster, Catherine Lacey with Pew, Kate Elizabeth Russell with My Dark Vanessa, Dima Alzayat with Alligator and Other Stories, and Akwaike Emizi's The Death of Vivek Oji. Of this list, the assured debut novels included The Astonishing Kingdom Tide by Rai Curtis, the darkly funny Luster by Raven Leilani, and the compulsive My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, as well as Dima Alzayat's vivid, haunting collection of short stories. Akwaike Emezi's unforgettable The Death of Vivek Oji and Catherine Lacey's unsettling novel Pew. All these together make for what is quite simply an extraordinary shortlist, a roll call of recent literary talent. My gratitude to the jury, to Stephen Sexton, to Francesca Rhydderch, Saima Aslam, and Joshua Ferris for the exhilarating conversations and the intense discussions around these books. We will very soon get to know the winner of the Dylan Thomas Prize for 2021. Until then, let's listen into the readings from the shortlisted books. Here's to their voices, their words, and their craft. Thank you.
That's our thanks to Professor Elwyn Evans and Amita Gogale. And now it is time for us all to settle down for readings from our 2021 shortlist writers. Enjoy.
There used to be a time when our names mattered, when being Syrian meant something else. Turn that off. They count us like grains of rice. I cannot bear it. Come closer, listen. We used to be given things on our name alone. We would go to Abu Sadi's, my oldest brother, your grandfather, leading the way, and pick out whatever pastries we wanted. Abu Sadi's son would wrap them in red boxes and tie the boxes with white ribbons. He would write our name in a thick book his father kept next to the register. Sometimes he gave us pieces of fresh nougat, maybe with pistachios, maybe almonds. He came out from behind the counter and leaned over to hand me mine because I was the youngest. We paid with our name, you see, and my father took care of what we owed. He was an important man. His was a heavy name. People left their shops to greet him when he walked by. I tell you, they offered to drive him even when they saw him standing near his own car. He was in charge of the country's border guards. More than 1,000 men worked under him. Nothing came into the country and nothing left unless he knew about it. Tall he was, taller than most men, and neat. He liked everything neat. My mother washed our clothes by hand, but his uniform she sent out at the end of each week to be cleaned and ironed with starch. Turn that off, I beg you. Their words cut like knives. God keep you. Listen. I read what you wrote in that essay. Your father showed me. Oh, don't be upset with him. He did not want me to see. He was crying while he read it, and I asked him what it was. I don't know why he cried. Maybe he will tell you. He seemed proud. He said it was a good grade. Is that why you showed him? Well, stop that. There's no reason to be mad. I thought you made many good points. God keep you. You wrote it makes you sad that people are dying, that the country might be no more. I agree with you. These things make me sad too. But you used so many words and none of them mentioned any names. How can you say what was lost without them? Our names mattered, I tell you. Without them, you cannot understand the whole of it. I don't want to upset you. Please don't go. God protect you. Listen, don't be mad at your father. When your grandparents moved here, he was still young, younger than you are now. He was much smaller than the other boys. I knew he had a hard time. It would be even harder for a child like him now. My heart would not bear it. Back then, it was only his size. He learned English in less than a year and no one noticed him doing it. Don't be mad. You can write what you like, of course. Sit with me a while longer.
I no longer pass judgment on any man or woman. People are people, and I do not believe there is much more to be said on the matter. 20 years ago, I might have been of a different mind about that, but I was a different Cloris Waldrop back then. I might have gone on being that same Cloris Waldrop, the one I had been for 72 years, had I not fallen out of the sky in that little airplane on Sunday, August 31st, 1986. It does amaze that a woman can reach the tail end of her life and find that she hardly knows herself at all. I sat by the window, and my dear husband, Mr. Waldrop, sat on my right. He had his hands busy fiddling with a ragged cuticle. My husband was a kind, bird-faced man, and he wore strong glasses. He was born in Amarillo, Texas, to an awning salesman and a midwife. I first ever laid eyes on him in the summer of 1927 at a county dance in the town hall. This was after his family had moved the some 60 miles east from the big, noisy boom town of Amarillo to little old Clarendon, where I was born and raised. He was a terribly handsome boy, tall and dark-haired. However, he wore a little blue cap that made him look mighty silly. We were both only kids. I had just turned 13. He gave me a pitifully wilted rose he had stolen from Mrs. McKee's garden. On that morning in August of 1986, he had a dab of jalapeno jelly on his chin. It had been there since our complimentary breakfast at the Big Sky Motel in Missoula, Montana. I was going to tell him to use the handkerchief I had embroidered with his initials and given him some many Christmases before, but he had already begun for the pilot a monologue on rainfall. Such was his custom with men he had just met. Mr. Waldrop had arranged for us to take a scenic flight to an airfield near a cabin we had rented in the Bitterroot National Forest. The pilot he had hired was a strong, well-groomed young man by the name of Terry Squime. Terry was not a hair over 30 and was newly wed. He showed us a photograph of his bride. She was pretty and resembled Catherine Drewer, a rude and frustrating brunette woman I knew from our church, First Methodist, only Mrs. Squime was quite some years younger and had a jaw less like a shoehorn and a nose less like an old mushroom. When I would later come to know Mrs. Squime, whom I have cautioned against reading certain passages of this account, I would find her to be a pleasant and selfless young woman and to be very little like Catherine Drewer at all. Mr. Waldrop carried on about rainfall and the nuisance of beavers, and I returned to looking out my little window. The Cessna 340 is a little twin-propeller airplane of 6 seats, and ours had taken off from an airfield outside of Missoula and was flying south over the Bitterroot Mountains. I mean to tell you, these are mountains, the kind that can remind a person, no matter how old they are, that they are infinitely young to the earth. These mountains are edged and scalloped like gigantic kin to the arrowheads my little brother, Davy, God rest his tiny soul, unearthed in Paladura Canyon when we were small. I had lived 72 years in the Texas Panhandle, and mountains are not a geological feature you will find in that country. The land is as flat can be, level with what is level in the constitution and spirit of the people who walk it. We plains folk are a grounded people, and rarely see a mountain. But having seen what I have now seen of them, when I say these were mountains, you would be right to believe me.
On the day Vivek was born, Chika had held the baby in his arms and stared at that scar. He'd seen it before. Kavita always commented on its shape whenever she rubbed Ahunna's feet. Kavita had been without a mother for so long, her love for Ahunna was tactile and rich with childlike affection, 100,000 touches. They would sit together, read together, walk in the farm together, and Ahunna would give thanks that she'd given birth to 2 sons and been gifted 2 daughters. When Ekene and Mary had their child Osita, Ahunna had wept over his little face, singing to him in soft Igbo. She couldn't wait for Chika and Kavita's baby to arrive. Now it was a year later, and Chika felt something building in him slowly as he held his newborn son, like folds of pouring cement hardening into a sick fear, but he ignored it. These things were just stories. They couldn't be real. It wasn't until the next day that a messenger boy from the village came to Ngwa to tell Chika that Ahunna had died the day before, her heart seizing at the threshold of her house, her body slumping into her compound, the earth receiving her slack face. He should have known, Chika told himself. As Kavita screamed in grief, Vivek clutched to her chest. He did know. How else could that scar have entered the world on flesh, if it had not left in the first place? A thing cannot be in 2 places at once. But still, he denied this for many years, for as long as he could. Superstition, he said. It was a coincidence, the marks on their feet, and besides, Vivek was a boy and not a girl, so how can? Still, his mother was dead, and their family was bereft, and in the middle of all of this was a new baby. This is how Vivek was born. After death and into grief, it marked him, you see. It cut him down like a tree. They brought him into a home filled with incapacitating sorrow. His whole life was a mourning. Kavita never had another child. He's enough, she would say. This was enough. Picture a house thrown into wailing the day he left it, restored to the way it was when he entered. Picture his body wrapped. Picture his father shattered, his mother gone mad. A dead foot with a deflated starfish spilled over its curve, the beginning and end of everything.
If you ever need to, and I hope you never need to, but a person cannot be sure, if you ever need to sleep, If you are ever so tired that you feel nothing but the animal weight of your bones, and you're walking along a dark road with no one, and you're not sure how long you've been walking, and you keep looking down at your hands and not recognizing them, and you keep catching a reflection in darkened windows and not recognizing that reflection, and all you know is the desire to sleep, and all you have is no place to sleep, one thing you can do is look for a church. What I know about churches is they usually have many doors, and often at least one of those doors, late at night, has been left unlocked. The reason churches have so many doors is that people tend to enter and leave churches in groups, in a hurry. It seems people have a lot of reasons for entering a church, and perhaps even more reasons for leaving one, but the only reason I've gone to a church was to sleep. The reasons I've left a church were to avoid being caught sleeping, or because I'd already been caught sleeping and was being asked to leave. Those are the only reasons I can remember, though I'm having trouble lately with remembering. I left someplace, began walking, slept in all those churches, then everything else happened. That's all I know. I don't think they're so great, churches. I don't think they're so great at all. That's not what I mean when I say you can go to one when you're tired. I'm not talking about grace or deliverance. A person cannot really speak of such things. What I mean is a church is a structure with walls and a roof and pretty windows that make it so you can't see outside. They're like casinos in that way, or shopping malls, or those big drugstores with all the aisles, music piped in from somewhere, the endless search for that final thing. But a church is often a building, often a sturdy building, and it can keep the outside far from you, and when the outside is far enough from you, that is when a person can sleep. One thing it seems that everybody needs is to sleep, and one thing people might not always have when they need it is a place to sleep or enough time to travel to a place where they can sleep, and so, a church. Maybe a church will fix this problem for you someday, or maybe it already has. For some time, I only slept in churches. A few nights I tried to sleep in some woods or a bathroom stall or behind a gas station, and I took a few good naps in a cemetery. But the only place I could ever sleep for any real time back then was a church. Since then, I'm not sure I've completely fallen asleep or woken up. Days and nights unspool together. Sometimes I think I might be writing a letter to sleep, that I might be asking him if he remembers me, if he ever plans on coming back. I've received no word from Death's brother. I have not entered a church in some time. Thank you.
I take a bus to the correct library, and inside I can smell the natural decay, the fermentation, the glue and twine and leather. Paper, as it degrades and betrays its origin, reminds you it comes from the trees. I circle each floor until I get to an exhibit on wartime cognitive dissonance and the physiology of dissent. After a brief dedication to the donors, there are helmets, cracked, blown out, covered in names of wives, children, and wry condemnations of God. A Viet Cong bicycle on display, backlit by warm orange light. Photographs of soldiers cleaning their glasses and tuning transistors. The helicopter blades and jungle brush, foiling the camera's aperture with movement and incomplete light. Naked children in self-immolation and prisoners of war, wilting on tarmacs, a daisy in the barrel of a gun, having nothing on the unnatural look of a soldier's smile. The look of the incomplete synthesis of fight or flight, and the limbic system when it cannot compute. My father only ever smelled like this. Like every morning he had to put on his skin and adhere to a code of behavior he could no longer understand. A highly functioning collection of pathologies with shrapnel in his back. He was years removed from the service by the time I was old enough to misplace his Purple Heart, but during prayer meetings and birthday parties, it was apparent he was different, molecularly, like some fundamental human component had either been emptied out or in bad days cranked up to 11. The 4th of July or a person entering his room too silently, grounds for a survival response so disproportionate that as a kid, you struggle to understand the blind anger in periods of profound withdrawal. That when you go to see the fireworks with your mother, and he isn't there, you understand that whatever keeps him away is scary, that it is sad. When my father was a soldier, his prefrontal cortex wasn't yet complete. He could not grow a full mustache, and when he came back home, he had a cane and a DIY tattoo of a woman's name. The cane was mostly for show. The woman was his first wife, and my mother was his third. He spent his formative years in various homes in the Bible Belt with grim aunts who could trace their American lineage to the original bill of sale. He kept chickens while his mother, the sibling his aunts didn't talk about, was in Louisiana slowly going mad. These were the terms of art my father gave to me as I was learning to swim, his old man's vocabulary having none of the clinical tact of the DSM-5. There were asylums, there was madness, and in the place of Germans, there were krauts. His mother did not have a chemical imbalance. She had something fickle, something female, and so she returned to him with a severed frontal lobe. He was afraid of her like I would one day be afraid of him, because children, like dogs, are attuned to the signs of an impending storm. He became a man who always had girlfriends but didn't much like them, a strapping sailor with a dampened drawl on his center part, his unruly hair slicked back with pomade. Then the war, shit and mud and some fusion of the two. The shipwreck centrifuge and the axon unraveled to the center of the nerve. My father, the civilian, alarming the neighborhood with his midnight walks. He had done it. The thing that most animals do, which only a few animals grieve. He had been up close and found it strange, killing for his country, a country that once he was back home, reminded him that patriots could be shell-shocked, could be spangled in Arlington grass, but absolutely could not be black. At home, the banks, the churches, the women were nothing. He saw that the people at home did not see black men like him among them, that they were unprepared. So he came to New York armed only with confidence, and after 2 dead wives, my mother appeared before him on Broadway and 143rd, pretty and young and high. Thank you.
When Strain and I met, I was 15 and he was 42. A near perfect 30 years between us. That's how I described the difference back then. Perfect. I loved the math of it. 3 times my age, how easy it was to imagine 3 of me fitting inside him. 1 of me curled around his brain, another around his heart, the 3rd turned to liquid and sliding through his veins. At Berwick, he said teacher-student romances were known to happen from time to time, but he'd never had one because before me, he'd never had the desire. I was the first student who put the thought in his head. There was something about me that made it worth the risk. I had an allure that drew him in. It wasn't about how young I was, not for him. Above everything else, he loved my mind. He said I had genius-level emotional intelligence and that I wrote like a prodigy, that he could talk to me, confide in me. Lurking deep within me, he said, was a dark romanticism, the same kind he saw within himself. No one had ever understood that dark part of him until I came along. It's just my luck, he said, that when I finally find my soulmate, she's 15 years old. If you want to talk about luck, I countered, try being 15 and having your soulmate be some old guy. He checked my face after I said this to make sure I was joking. Of course I was. I wanted nothing to do with boys my own age, their dandruff and acne, how cruel they could be, cutting girls up into features, rating our body parts on a scale of 1 to 10. I wasn't made for them. I loved Strain's middle-aged caution, his slow courtship. He compared my hair to the color of maple leaves, slipped poetry into my hands, Emily, Edna, Sylvia. He made me see myself as he did, a girl with the power to rise with red hair and eat him like air. He loved me so much that sometimes after I left his classroom, he lowered himself into my chair and rested his head against the seminar table, trying to breathe in what was left of me. All of that happened before we even kissed. He was careful with me. He tried so hard to be good. It's easy to pinpoint when it all started, that moment of walking into his sun-soaked classroom and feeling his eyes drink me in for the first time, but it's harder to know when it ended, if it really ended at all. I think it stopped when I was 22, when he said he needed to get himself together and couldn't live a decent life while I was within reach. But for the past decade, there have been late night calls, him and me reliving the past, worrying the wound we both refused to let heal. I assume I'll be the one he turns to in 10 or 15 years whenever his body begins to break down. That seems the likely ending to this love story. Me dropping everything and doing anything, devoted as a dog, as he takes and takes and takes. Thank you.
Now, I believe we are nowhere without education, and education should never stop. And the right to education should be available to all. Now, through its educational standard projects, Dylan ED, the Dylan Thomas Prize partners with schools and colleges, university students, and the community, Dylan ED works locally to inspire young people to develop their own creative voices, and it's gone global through workshops for 8 to 11-year-olds in India, thanks to the generous support of the British Council. With the British Council of Wales. And the global Dylan Thomas collaborations continue to grow. So tomorrow, on International Dylan Thomas Day, as a result of a significant partnership between Swansea University, the Dylan Thomas Trust, and the Harry Ransom Center at the University of Texas, Austin, a brand new digital Dylan online platform will be launched, hosted by the Harry Ransom Center in Texas, which contains the largest of many library and archival collections worldwide related to the life and career of Dylan Thomas. So this wonderful new online initiative will offer a wealth of resources to all. Who wouldn't like that? Let's find out a little bit more. Now it's time to hand over to the chair of the judges, Namita Gokale, for our all-important announcement, the winner of the 2021 Swansea University Dylan Thomas Prize. Poblok.
And the winner, Luster by Raven Lilani. Luster by Raven Lilani has been described as a millennial novel, and somewhere it carries the ache of youth and uncertainty in the accomplished first-person presentation. 23-year-old Eddie's brutal and incisive eye for racism and all registers of conscious and unconscious racist bias is masterly. The intergenerational, interracial encounters are skillfully done. She is sensitive to the forced tokenism and atonal incomprehensions of such conversations. She also writes skillfully and unblinkingly about sex. Painting too becomes an effective metaphor for symbolic representation and self-recognition. This is an important and uncomfortable book, told through a narrative voice that tells the story in so many registers, be they funny, vulnerable, angry. After many conversations and long deliberations, the jury of the Dylan Thomas Prize unanimously decided on this riveting debut novel as its choice for the 2021 prize. It was not easy to choose between so much that was excellent, that was brilliant, and that was relevant. I congratulate Ravan Delani and all the shortlisted authors and wish them the very best in their creative journeys. Thank you.
Many congratulations to the 2021 winner. That's great. Clongofachriadau. Brilliant. Please head over to the prize's social media platforms. The details are on the screen for all the reactions and news for the winner very shortly. But for now, it just remains for me to say a very special thank you to all our partners, supporters, our brilliant shortlist and judges, our team, including our founder and president, Professor Peter Steed, and our fantastic student interns. And of course, many thanks to all of you at home for watching this evening. A very good night to you all. Nos da. Diolch yn fawr iawn. We will see each other next time.